I'm Matt Valley, and welcome to episode number 98 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Now, today is a really special day. It's my first day back after a brief hiatus, looking after my health, but I am back and I'm better than ever, so look out, ready to roll. Now, back in July, I attended the Quirks event in New York City, which was a really great conference where two really cool things happened. First of all, it was my first time being part of the Quirks MR Jam. So I filled in on the drums for 4 songs with a bunch of brilliant musicians who happen to be market researchers, and that was a real thrill for me. But number 2, I met this really brilliant market researcher and cultural strategist. We got involved in a great conversation, and I bought her book, which turned out to be this brilliant book, which you can see is dog-eared and knurled and well-worn. Of course, that author is my guest today, who is Pepper Miller, who is the longtime president of a market research and strategy firm called Hunter Miller. And she's an excellent author, and I'm super excited because I've learned so much from her recently, both personally and through her book, and I'm excited to have her on the podcast. So welcome to the show, Pepper.
Matt, you have become one of my favorite people. I mean, seriously, I love our conversation. I am delighted to be here. Glad you like the book. Look at mine.
Oh,
I mean, I have to read it and reread it so I can be ready for brilliant people like you. Thank you so much for those kind words. I really, really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. But this book was so insightful for me. And we'll talk all about that in a second, right? But here's where I want to start, right? So we want to know a little bit more about what Pepper is all about, right? So and how you got into research and insights in the first place. So let us know how you got started, and then take us up to the present day.
Thank you, Matt. Well, like most researchers, I think, I'm older. I'm a woman of a certain age, and there were no market research courses or anything like that. And I kind of fell into it. I worked at J. Walter Thompson in the office planning department. I loved that job. It was doing research and meeting with different department heads about their needs. I absolutely loved it. And I asked to go to the 4A's program, and I participated in that. And that's where I learned about market research. So I didn't get into research at the company, but a partner, a colleague and I, we decided to start our own market research. And we just kind of fell into it. We didn't know about facilities. We were recruiting people off the street. It was crazy. It was crazy. But once I got into it, I started knocking on doors. That relationship lasted maybe a couple of years. And I went out on my own. And I'm knocking on doors, showing up in the brown skin, and was told, we'll call you if we have something Black. And I was, are you talking to me? I just wanted to do research. So the opportunities for me to practice my craft came from the Burrells, the Black agencies, the Jean Morrises, the Barbara Proctors back then, the Sam Chisholms. Burrell is still around, but those others are not. The Black hair care companies. And so as I'm conducting these groups, and I love the exploratory work where you're having conversations, not a lot of going on these days about having conversations with Black people. That's another conversation. But what I learned was what the brands were putting out in terms of messages, advertising was not really resonating well with us. And the images that they had were not quite representative of us. And so I started going out and speaking about this at multicultural conferences where there was no Black people talking about Black people at these multicultural conferences. And I just became obsessed and crazy and passionate about it and wanting to tell our story. So that's kind of how I got into it, and everything else kind of evolved with other books, and it just got really wonderful crazy for me.
Yeah, yeah. Now we'll get into the book in a second, but
Yeah.
what's interesting about it is the title, which is Let Me Explain Black Again. So this is your third time around, right? So your
Yes,
third time out.
it is.
Tell us about that experience and
It is.
why again.
Right. It's, and the title is not meant to be punitive. My first book was What's Black About It? That's what a lot of Black agencies would ask, especially the creative teams, the creative team directors, leaders, would say, well, what's Black about that ad? Or what's Black about that media plan? Or what's Black about that in research plan? What is it that really is going to connect and engage with people? And so that was the first book in 2005. There wasn't a book, Matt, about Black insights on the market. The last book that was written was in 76 by D. Park Gibson. He too was a Black researcher. So there was no other books out there. So that was that.
Right.
But that book was, there was no social media as we know it, no iPhone, no Facebook.
Right. Different world.
None of that. So my second book, I was like, oh my God, I need to write something that includes, social media and the new technology and how important those are for engaging Black people. So the second book was Black Still Matters in Marketing. And it was during the time when Barack Obama was the president. I said, this is going to be great, man. We got a Black president, not elected by just Black people. So surely people are interested, but it was tough because Barack Obama's presidency, his presence as a president, the president of the United States of America, was a signal to many business leaders that we are now post-racial. And we don't need to invest in Black research, Black marketing, Black media. So it was tough 8 years. And so this book, Let Me Explain Black Again, evolved from people still holding that we're a post-racial mindset until Donald Trump was elected president. And so business leaders were, maybe we need to rethink some things. And then when George Floyd was murdered, it was America's aha moment. So it's these, and then COVID happened, and then the protests. So those three disruptors, Trump, COVID, and George Floyd, collectively were opportunities to tell another story, in addition to the Black millennial growth and the fact that people were still coming to me after a presentation, after a market research study with Black consumers, or after a workshop. They were coming to me confidently and saying, Pepper, I didn't know. Now this has been happening ever since I started my journey with Black research and Black insights, but it was increasing during that time because of those three disruptors. Thus the title, Let Me Explain Black Again. 2 previous books, people still, saying they didn't know. And then those 3 American disruptors, and the fact that Black people are still growing and becoming more advanced, but still wanting to hold on to their culture. There's this perception that as we become more sophisticated and more like mainstream, again, that's another reason for not investing. So I said we need to go broad and we need to go deep this time on this book.
Yeah, it's so interesting you draw a tie to the post-racial mindset of Obama, as I think about, because I feel like it can draw a straight line between what was happening there and then what was happening on the ground with research. Because what I felt like at the time was, it seemed like there was a heightened awareness for, let's say, different ethnic backgrounds when it came to research, but the way that it was handled primarily was, hey, now we need to make sure we have fully representative samples, right? Yes. So we need to have the right proportion of Black consumers and the right proportion of Hispanics, and maybe even by acculturation model and all those kinds of things. But there still was no real acknowledgement that these consumers are motivated differently. They've got a different context that they bring to the table. So it's more like, hey, we're going to check the box because we now have a sample that everyone is included in the proper proportions, but it didn't really go any further than that.
Absolutely, Matt. And there was no designated Black researcher or Hispanic researcher, Asian research, still a problem today. So, and because we speak English, most Black people here in the US, language has become the cultural identifier. If you speak a different language, there's a recognition that there's a different culture. But for Black Americans, from a marketing perspective, they just roll us in with mainstream for media planning, for market research. So not understanding that Black people are different, but not deficient. That's the other thing, that we come here with this cloud of stereotypes. And a big part of the Black experience and the multicultural experience, Black, Asian, Hispanic, LGBT, is to counter these negative stereotypes. That is in us. It's part of our DNA when we look at advertising and different types of communications. We are always looking, it just doesn't go away. We're looking for representation and authenticity and relevancy all the time, over and over and over again. And that's one of the things that is a big misstep that many marketers don't understand about us. We are different, but not deficient. Yes, I speak English, but are you talking to me?
Yes, important distinction. Now with this book, the thing that really sucked me in right away, so here it is, it's on Paramount Market Publishing.
Thank you.
One thing I just really loved about it is that it feels like a book, of course, it could appeal to a lot of people, but it felt like a book for me as a researcher and a marketer, right? And so when I started reading it, there's a real important historical context that you provide, but it's not one that's designed to shame and blame, somebody that looks like me. It's designed to inform and say, okay, here's the context in which Black consumers, this is the context they bring to the table. And it's so important because then you draw the lines to say, here's the what, here's the why, and then of course here's the so what, and then what is the opportunity? What's the opportunity for researchers and marketers? So it's really a pragmatic book, and it's so illuminating, like, wow, okay, I get it. I didn't really make that connection, and now I really understand this. So tell me a little bit about how you decided to sort of organize this book.
So after many presentations, I make it a point to do presentations at research conferences, marketing conferences, and colleges and universities. So when I started doing these presentations, I was frustrated and a little angry. And I did a lot of finger pointing, and you did this to us. And you oh my goodness, it was terrible. And nobody would come up to me to talk to me afterwards. And I didn't realize that what I was saying was anger, and frustration coming out. And I needed to I said, I want people to hear me, but I have to tell our story. It's not pretty, but I have to tell our story. And my ex-husband, who is still my good friend, said, Pepper, just tell the truth. Just tell the truth, and then you won't have to worry about anything. So I flipped that, and instead of finger pointing, I'm just telling our story. I'm just telling you how Black people see things. I am telling you what happened to us, and I'm bringing forth the why. We do these things. There's a million beliefs and behaviors, zillions of beliefs and behaviors about Black people, colorism, code switching, Black versus people of color and BIPOC, and just on and on, that relates to our identity, and that all ladders back up to our history. That is the most important insight for understanding Black people. We have this different history, As
Yeah.
a result of this history, we have a different lens in terms of how we see ourselves and how we perceive how others see us. I always start there. And then I connect the dots back to it so that people could see it and then not feel that I'm finger pointing, but it's my story, it's our story. So I've been on that path and it seems to work. It's been frustrating though, Matt, today that we're going through this great erasure of our history. And some brands are buying into it, but I think most are not. So I learned to just tell my truth in a way that others can identify with it. And that includes saying the word slavery, but not saying it over and over and over again, but absolutely saying it. And also then when we talk about our history, we talk about the historical lens and the lens and not use slavery. Instead of saying white people, say society, so that people will not feel like they're being attacked, that they can pick and choose what part of the story that they belong to or that they understand or that they connect with. So you don't want to alienate people. And I thought it was important, as you said, to explain the why
Yeah.
with sidebars. And here's a sidebar story to support the point that I made. Here's the opportunity. This is why this matters. And then all the footnotes to show that, because a lot of what I'm saying is learned from research, but I also did make sure that I found resources to support my learnings and my hypotheses about Black people. So, I mean, it was a lot of work and research that went into it, but it was driven by my desire for people to understand our value as a people, as well as our value as a market segment. For me, it's about understanding. And then secondarily, you need to target us, if you will. But that's secondary. Understanding comes first.
Yeah, yeah. I just remember again, like that post-racial thing. I was living in Chicago at that time, and I read an article. I can't remember where it was, but it was about how the most divided day in America is on Sunday, right? Where all of a sudden, everyone is kumbaya during the week, but
Yeah, yeah.
totally separate churches on Sunday. And the question is, why is that, right? And I think you deal with a lot of the things in the book that help make that make sense. And
Yes.
you talk a lot about authenticity, and I get the impression that the Black community has been marketed to in a way that is inauthentic for a
Yes.
long time. But
Mhm.
it feels like the opportunity is right there if you have deep respect for the community, and you do things the right way. There's so much opportunity there for you to connect with that market.
I'm so glad you brought up the church. I don't get an opportunity, I don't have an opportunity to talk about it on podcasts or even in my presentations, but the Black church helped Black people through the Middle Past. It's the faith of the Black people and how the Black church was created. And we are more emotional. We are loud. We are celebratory. In particularly in the Baptist and the Church of God in Christ churches, but now becoming more in like Black Catholic churches, for example. They have more music and people can be more celebratory with them. But I have found for many brands that the Black social justice church provides a huge opportunity for many brands. In general, the church in general, they're losing congregations, they're losing
Yeah.
people. They're leaving the church, and that's been driven by youth in general. Now, Black youth are leaving the church too, but at a lesser rate than mainstream
Right.
youth. But the church says no sex, no premarital sex, no having children out of wedlock, no living together. and anti-LGBT plus. And so that doesn't sit well with millennials. But the Black Social Justice Church focuses on what they talk about as, and I might be getting this wrong, the doctrine of Jesus Christ, which was about helping everybody and being inclusive and having a message of how do we take care of those that don't have enough. And that's why an AARP or many pharmaceutical companies or healthcare companies can have a relationship with the Black church to talk about their products and services. It's so important. It's old school strategy or tactic that a lot of companies want to get away with, but I think it's still very, very, very important. And I talk about that and I feature Trinity United Church of Christ, which was under the gun.
Yeah.
The Obama administration, but it's a wonderful, it's not anti-white, it's not anti-flag or anti-American. You know, many people feel that when Black people come together and talk about the desire for equality, that we are pointing a finger at America and saying that, you know, you are anti-American, and it's not. We want to be part of mainstream. We want equal opportunities. That's all. We want to, and we really want to be with each other. You know, we want to be with other, we want to be with mainstream. We love our culture. We want to keep that, but we're not anti-white, anti-flag, or anti-American. It becomes threatening for people when we talk about take a knee. And I don't get how people see that that's anti-flag, maybe because we're not standing, but kneeling is a respectful way to protest, not the flag, but to make a statement about how we are still fighting for equality. Civil rights is only 59, 60 years old. Slavery was 250 years. Jim Crow was 88 years, separate but equal to 60. I mean, so it's all of those things that happened to us longer than civil rights, and we're still going through it in spite of Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James. We're still fighting hard and tough for it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that really I felt like I really felt in my guts after reading the historical context in the book. Some of the stories like Tulsa are just so heartbreaking and shocking. And especially if you think about it wasn't that long ago, right? And that's the thing to remember. These are fairly recent events in the grand scheme of things. And so you simply can't believe that it would just go away, right? This is context. This is
absolutely
context.
I'm happy that you brought that up too, because there is, I think Toni Morrison and James Baldwin and oh God, I can't. Anyway, and many of our past authors talk about this white gaze of looking at Black people as less than. And there's a Black gaze too, where Black people look at Black people as less than. It's the what's wrong with them? Why can't they get it together? Why can't they be more like us? What's the problem? And what they don't understand is the history of a Tulsa where it was this thriving Black community, forced segregation. So we came together, had our own businesses, and really owned school systems and hospital systems. And a fight broke out where a Black guy was accused of looking at a woman or bumping into her in the wrong way. And it was terrible. And eventually that town was air bombed.
Unbelievable.
Totally destroyed, and nobody ever talked about it. And the same with the Freedmen's Bank in 1874, where Black people had, I think it was $57 million newly emancipated slaves and soldiers who fought in the Civil War. and this bank was in 17 states, and they were convinced to put their whatever little money that they had in the bank, and it was $57 million, and it was stolen, taken from them, embezzled. And nobody talked about it, and nobody went to jail. And so my point was, where do you think Black people would be if we had the strategies from the Tulsa, Oklahoma community, and the resources and the monies, if that was flowing through our community? Where would we be? And where would we be if we had $57 million? I think today that comes close to a couple of $1 trillion, for example, in terms of worth. Where do you think Black people would be? So, looking at us and what's wrong with us, that becomes the why and what happened. And it's amazing that we're still here. We are a resilient people given all that we've been through. And then today, we're still Black, brown, and poor people are still navigating broken systems. Education, broken. Housing, broken. Healthcare, broken. Finance, broken. The justice system, broken. And we are still navigating those broken systems. So those are some of the things that people don't understand. They look at the Oprahs, the LeBrons, the people who made it through the funnel. Our opportunity, Matt, has long been a very narrow funnel of possibilities. And there's some people that make it through that to this ultimate success level, but it does not speak for the rest of us that are trying to get through the funnel, which is probably too where the crabs in the barrel came from. Us trying to get through the funnel, not pulling each other down, but trying to get through this small funnel to seize this opportunity of success that America promises us.
Right. Okay, so I have one last question about the book, because you talk a lot about what to do about this, right, in this messy world, and how to connect authentically with this community. Are there any brands that you would highlight that have done this well?
Few brands are really best practice. I get that all the time. Many brands create initiatives that have been done well, or one-offs. They get in and then they get out. And so we searched, Matt, for criteria for brands that are best practices, that are really, really doing well. And we couldn't find any. I couldn't find anything. So we created a list of criteria that we think many brands might consider following to be a best practice. But is one company, and it's Procter & Gamble, is a huge company that has done, I think, pretty well at really trying to understand and engage Black America. And they've gone above and beyond. Mark Pritchard is the Chief Global Brand Officer, and he has created under his leadership and I don't even want to call it an initiative, a project called Widening the Screen. And they have created videos of showing what the full experience of Black life. And they have invested in Black marketing and advertising, and they're investing more. There was a time when they fell into the total market bag. 85 of their brands were total market. They probably, I believe they had even moved some of their budgets from Black agencies to mainstream agencies under total market, which is, we can have one message to reach everybody, and the general market agencies push that. And I believe Procter & Gamble fell into the bucket, but they're coming back to the center where he talks about multicultural marketing is mainstream marketing. And so he's promoting Hispanic and Asian and LGBT communities. And from this perspective, the Black perspective, really, really creating lots of opportunities, promising to invest more in Black owned and operated media. Procter & Gamble. And another example that I really love is the Disney movie Soul. And I like that example because internally and externally, they created this wonderful animation about this musician. It's really, really great. But what they did, so they showed relevant Black experiences on screen, but it happened behind the scenes where a writer, they listened to the writer who I think even became one of the directors of the film, where he talked about the importance of using insights and Black cultural situations. And they listened to him, and it helped make this wonderful, wonderful film. And so their approach from, I think his name is Peter Brown, I may have that wrong, from inside and outside is a great example, collaborating, bringing on more Black people, using Black insights, listening, applying the application of the insights to create this wonderful, wonderful animation. So those are some examples that I think are really worth promoting and talking about. But ideally, I would like for many brands to consider investing long-term, investing in research, investing in Black media, using Black agencies more and Black researchers more, having teams of people that are more diverse in terms of ethnicity or maybe even physical capabilities as well. You know, the full scope of what diversity means and what it is. I think that's ideally what we like. Learning, leading with Black insights, learning, leading with ethnic insights. When you get it right with Black people and ethnic consumers, you always get it right with mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. Here. All right. So Pepper, you've been on this journey now for a long time of cultural insights and strategy. Not that long, right? But you've seen a lot of the fits and starts and ups and downs. So as we sit here today and you're sort of gazing into the future, what does that look like? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? What do you think?
You know, most days I'm optimistic. Some days I am pessimistic. You know, when you hear some of the politicians talking about how woke is anti-white, and that goes all the way back to 1920s, where Black people, it's important for us to remain aware of what's happening to us, of the discriminations, and to use our voice to talk about it. You know, so it's a thump in the heart when you hear that, or the great erasure. But I am encouraged because I believe opportunities like this and insights can evolve into really great storytelling. That's kind of where we are now.
Right.
People use that as titles. I am the storyteller. They maybe they're a creative director, or maybe they're an account person, but that becomes a title for or a position, or books, or podcast, or so now we have this opportunity for great storytelling. And storytelling is not one story, it's a collection of stories. So that's where insights, I think, that's where the opportunity for insights to evolve. And that is a huge opportunity for all of us. So that makes me optimistic.
Yeah, cool. I love it. So I would imagine that a number of our listeners would be really interested to know what media you're consuming, either for, where are you getting your insights? Where are you keeping your pulse on, what the wider world is all about, or maybe even just for enjoyment? What media are you consuming nowadays,
You know
Pepper?
what? The enjoyment is really where I get my insights. Sometimes the news, and I stay connected with trade associates, Ad Age, Adweek, the ANA, of course, the Insights Association, QRCA, Quirks, Chicago Advertising Federation. I'm a member of all of those, all of that. But where I really get a lot of insights from are audiobooks and storytelling when I take my break. So one of my favorites is Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Sun. Other Suns. She talks about the Great Migration, and it took her 15 years to write this book. So she helps us understand real life characters in her book from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. These three people who migrated from the South to the North in hopes of a better life. It was a little better, but not much, not much. Right. Another author that I love is Jodi Picoult. I don't know if you've heard of Jodi Picoult. I love her book, two books, Leaving Time, where she talks about this little girl is searching for her mother. Her mother left when she was, I guess, 3. But she's been searching for her mother. She's 13 now. And she lived on this elephant sanctuary. And Jodi does such wonderful work in terms of research, in terms of helping us understand elephants. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I loved that. And I learned from that. And then another book that she wrote was Small Great Things, where she talked about, it's a story about a Black nurse who was told by a white supremacist couple not to take care of their baby. And they had to go to the administrators of the hospital. We don't want anybody touching our baby, anybody Black. And so the baby goes into distress, and the Black nurse attempts to save the baby dies, and the nurse gets arrested. It's crazy. But it's a wonderful story. And Jodi has all the nuances about Black culture. The nurse who was arrested has a white, empathetic female attorney that still doesn't quite get this Black thing right. But Jodi Picoult gets all these nuances right. And so there's a lot of learning from there. The language that is used in these books has helped me in my own work and me personally as a Black person in America. And then I love the Alex Cross books as well. But these are all audiobooks. Alex Cross book, he's a behavioral scientist and a detective. And so he has to use insights in order to identify the minds of the criminal. And he's a Black guy with this Black family. And I just love those books. So entertainment helps me. It gives me energy. I can take a break from all the, you should be doing this in marketing and market research to seeing myself and seeing my culture and how I fit in and how others see us as well, and learning from other cultures as well. I love audiobooks. Too much stuff to read, Matt. I got to do audiobooks.
I do have to, I lied. There's one more thing about the book that I want to come back to, because you were talking about the nuance with Jodi Picoult. And this is one of the things I so appreciated in the book. There's a discussion specifically about this question of Black versus Black American versus African American. And honestly, even with me, this is the kind of question that you're afraid to ask somebody. You're sort of confused about what the right term is. And you let me off the hook and you said, okay, here's my perspective on it. Here's why I think that way. Here's what I think it means. Do you want to just speak real quickly to that?
I love that. And it is the number one question that I'm asked. I could have just delivered the most profound, insightful presentation. And people come up to me, what do Black people want to be? How do they want to be represented? So I put that in my presentation now. So, and it is a good question, but it also speaks to people being afraid. I love that you said that. It's like, because today we are in the culture of I'm offended. Everybody gets offended by everything. And so people wanting to ask questions, white people, Asian people wanting to ask a Black person questions about Black culture is like, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. So that's the number one question. Black, African American, people of color, or BIPOC. What is it? So short answer, Black is preferred. Number of research studies have been shown that Black Americans are preferred? Because while all African Americans are Black by race, not all Black people here in the US are African Americans. We've got this
Right.
group of large group of Black people from Africa and Black Latinos that want to stay connected with their culture, and they do not
Right.
necessarily want to be called African American. So one of the things that happens with that then is that marketers and even some Black people interchange people of color with Black because they're still afraid to say the word Black.
Right.
Probably it comes from people like Donald Trump that says the Blacks. Don't say the Blacks because that connotes
Different connotation.
yeah. Too much differentness and otherness. And my otherness is better than your otherness. So if you're talking about Black people, Black books, Black things, just say Black. It was a Black thing. It was a Black concert. It was a Black book. There were Black people there. You can say that because that is preferred. It's not good to interchange Black with people of color or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It's a statement about our history being homogenized when we interchange them. My history and experience is different from an Asian person or a Hispanic person or a white person for that matter. So that's a great question. Don't be afraid to use that. And when writing, I interchange Black and African American sometimes, or when I'm speaking, I will interchange both. And most Black people are not offended if you use African American, they use African American. So either one of those could possibly work.
Sure.
Do work, and we're not offended, but Black Americans, it's definitely preferred.
Got it. Super useful. Like I said, you let me off the hook, so I appreciate that.
Nah. Don't be scared, as we say.
Okay, Pepper. So this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast after all, right? So we have to turn to music, which of course is my personal love. All kinds of music, of course. So I have to ask, because this question gets at the heart of what makes you tick, right? So let's say, Pepper, you're stranded on a desert island, right? You have 3 records of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. This is the hardest question of all, right? What are those 3 records, Pepper?
I don't know. You know what? I am a stepper. I like smooth music. I like classical music too. My father was a classical pianist. I wanted to pull some of that in. But it is always, I always move wherever I am. I could be in the grocery store and I hear this music. So I guess my 3, I love records by the Isley Brothers. Maybe Once I Had Your Lovin' Baby. I love that.
School. Love it.
All my stuff is old school because I'm old school. I love Nelly, Come On Over to My Place. So
yeah,
Nelly's got
my
this.
My wife is cheering right now on the side.
So Nelly's got this, I don't know what you call it, the guitar run that starts off. I stop, rewind. I love that. I love it. And I can listen to that. That's my driving music too. And then I still old school. I like Frankie Beverly and Mays, Feel That You're Feeling. And I like Bette Miller, Do You Want to Dance? But those are stepping music too, where I can get my step on, man. And it's not the what is it? The sorority and fraternity step. It's a stylized swing dance, 8 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, you got to take less. It's a trip. Lane management, turns, where you're supposed to be. The 3 and the 6 are planning steps. Oh my God. It's like, but I love it. And I love the music that gets me there. And because I'm old school, I like that kind of stuff. Temptations. Nelly, Isley Brothers. And then Bette Midler, Do You Want to Dance? I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Excellent. I can get behind that. It's all good to me. Excellent. Well, Pepper, this has been a wonderful chat. I'm so glad I stopped by the booth there and chatted at Quirks.
I am too.
It's just been wonderful to get to know you and to really dig into this book. And I feel a lot smarter for having read it. So
thank you, Matt.
Grateful for your time. Let's definitely stay in touch and rock and roll.
Rock and roll, Matt. Rock and roll. Rock and roll. Absolutely. And I can't wait to come.